Okay, yesterday, a quick recap. I don't have to go through all this. This is fine. So yesterday we learned about the DTM, right? We learned about the demographic transition model. So remember, demographic means study of populations. So demography is the study of populations. Transition means a country's population, their demography, doesn't always stay the same. You know, it's not like the United States has had the same population over the last 200 plus years. So the United States population goes through periods of transition, goes through periods of change. Transition, model. And so this is the model that shows how a country's population changes over time. So keep in mind, you have 5 stages here. If you're looking for a stage that's considered progress or like an increase in people, that would be stage 2 and stage 3. If you're looking for stages where your population isn't growing at all or is even falling, stage 1 and stage 5. If you're looking for a population stage in which there's red flags about your population starting to trend downward, late stage 3 and stage 4. If you're looking for examples of some countries for each stage, there are no countries in stage 1 right now. This was all countries 400 to 500 years ago, which were more hunting and gathering societies, very agrarian. Stage 2 would be Niger, Congo, Ghana, Angola. A lot of your African, sub-Saharan African countries are in stage 2. Stage 3, many of your South American countries, Mexico, United States, India. Those are countries considered to be in stage 3. Essentially what you're looking for here, guys, is think back to that doubling time activity we did yesterday. If you want to look up like a list of the top increase rates in the world, those countries would be in stage 2. Middle of the pack would be in stage 3. Bottom third of the pack would be in stage 4, which is like your France, Germany, Scandinavian countries like Norway, Denmark, Sweden. Stage 5 is Russia. It's Italy. It's countries that actually have a negative number for their increase rate. So I think yesterday we did that doubling time activity, and Italy had a increase rate of -3, which means that every year their population is falling by 3%. So that's stage 5. So now what we're going to talk about why that happens. And I didn't really touch on this yesterday. And so, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to leave this on because I think this is better. I'm going to talk about how populations get from stage 2 to stage 5. And a lot of it, guys, has to do with one thing, the role of women. Now, there's some other factors as well, but we're going to talk quite a bit about the role of women. If you're having trouble hearing me too because of the wind, just let me know. Just interrupt me and let me know. Hopefully the wind isn't too much of a factor. It's really windy out here today. So in stage 2, a stage 2 country looks like this. Not very many cities. The vast majority of the population lives in small towns and on farms. And on those farms, people do not have access yet to good technology and mechanized equipment. So the vast majority of farming is done by hand. So if you're doing a lot of this farming by hand, you need a lot of people to help you. So where do you get those people from? Well, you have children. So that's why a society at this stage is very farm-like. It's very agrarian. Agrarian means agricultural. You have a lot of kids. And women during this time, what do you think women are mainly doing in a society like this, where everybody's farming, people are living in small towns and in their own homes?
Housework?
Yes, very good. Housework. And would you say that those women are highly educated and have access to health care and contraception like birth control?
Probably not. No.
Probably not. So as a result of that, if the main purpose of the woman in this stage is to provide kids and care for the kids, and they don't have access to education about birth planning and contraception, birth control, then they're going to have a lot of children. So in stage 2, that's what it looks like, which is why the increase rate is so high. But then as a country moves from stage 2 to stage 3, here's what that looks like. It's a country in which now there's more mechanized equipment. Now farming doesn't require all the hands, all the manual labor. You can farm a field with a tractor or a plow or a combine. And so all of a sudden, if you're the farmer that was having 7 or 8 children for the purpose of needing them to farm, now you might only need 3 or 4 kids. And now some of those kids that you're having aren't farming anymore. They're moving into cities. They're getting other jobs. And they're getting exposed to new ideas and new education. And some of those people are women. And so as women become more educated, guys, they become more educated, and now they get high-paying jobs and they get into the workforce. So think about it. If you were a woman that just entered the workforce, say you're 23 years old, you got a college degree, you got a full-time job, do you really have time for children? Are you really interested in having kids at that point?
No.
Probably not.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah, exactly. So women who are college graduates, who just got into the workforce, they're working 40 hours a week. You're thinking 8 to 10 hours a day, 5 days a week. They're not interested in having a family. And if they are, they're only going to have 1 or 2 children. And so now you connect that to the roles of women. Look what happens to the birth rate in stage 3 and stage 4. Stage 3 and stage 4 are countries that are heavily urbanized. A lot of people are living in cities. And so if you guys had 2 choices, right? You have choice A. Choice A is to live in the country and you get to live in a farmhouse. Choice B is to live in a big city like Chicago. In which place, Chicago or Woodstock, would you have more space, more physical space around you?
Chicago.
Woodstock. Think of how cramped it is. Think of how cramped it is in Chicago. One of the reasons you see all the tall buildings is there's nowhere to put those people on the ground, so you build up. So a lot of people in Chicago don't own homes. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are plenty of homeowners in Chicago, but there are substantially more people in Chicago that rent apartments or condos packed into small areas than people in Woodstock or in the small towns. So trying to get at here too, guys, is there's no space for a big family. If you want to have 5 or 6 kids, you need a lot of space. You need a big home for that. That's where the suburbs come into play. That's where small towns come into play. There are very few big families in the inner cities in Chicago. So hopefully that helps you understand stage 3 and 4. The reason why birth rates really start to fall in stage 5 is because now these countries are either declining economically. Italy and Russia have fallen behind the rest of the world in their economic growth. So there's not as many good paying jobs. There could be a lack of education. They could be experiencing wars or famine or conflict in which people really aren't interested in having large family sizes. And women, for the most part, are being turned away from having children. So that's what a stage 5 looks like, a negative natural increase rate. So in conclusion, make sure you know the role of agriculture in cities. An agricultural society needs more kids, probably could be in stage 2. Women, when they have access to birth control and healthcare and education, good paying jobs, they have fewer children, so they're in stage 3, 4, and 5. Women who don't have those things, then they're in stage 2. Okay? So any questions on that? This is essentially what these notes cover. I felt it would be better to use the model, the picture of the model, rather than talking through these notes. If you're wondering where the United States is right now, like I mentioned before, the United States is in stage 3. There are some concerns about the United States life expectancy and their birth rates in the future as women become what's called more empowered. Empowerment means like the right to vote, hold political office, get a good paying job, a good education. That's empowerment. So like with anything, there's a trade-off. You want women to be empowered. Obviously, you want them to have equal rights and equal representation in the workplace. The trade-off is going to be you only have so much time in the day. So if you're choosing that good paying job and that career, now there's less time for the kids. So you're having fewer and fewer of them. So that's the trend that the United States is heading towards as well. And tomorrow we'll talk about what governments do when those red flags shoot up, when they see that their females in their society aren't having as many kids as some would like. Okay. All right. We're going to talk about 3 types of population density. Before we do that, I got a question for you guys. So take 1 minute. Take 1 minute and think about the question that is on the screen, and I'll call on a few of you. 1 minute. What? Yeah, I got probably another 10 minutes of this video, but you can come outside. Yeah, but you just gotta let me work though, okay? It's my nephew and my kids. About 10 seconds left. All right. Sebastian, you there? Sebastian, if you're there, turn your mic on.
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, Sebastian, got a question. Do you see the question that was on the screen from earlier?
No.
Okay.
I forgot.
All right, Sebastian, where would you like to move to? Why? And what does it have to offer that would make you want to move there? Pick a place. You got to have a dream spot you'd like to move to or like to head to.
Not really. I haven't really thought about that.
There isn't a place in the world or a part of the world that you'd like to move to?
Not yet, I would say. I don't know.
Huh?
Not yet.
All right. Okay, you're not helping me here. All right, so I got to find somebody. Let's see. Ellen. Let's hear it, Ellen.
Sorry if you hear some roosters. They're kind of really loud right now. And I have 6, so that will happen.
No problem.
I don't have a specific spot where I want to move, but I want to live, or I want to travel through every nation of the world. And one place I actually want to live for a little bit is Antarctica. Even though people normally only live there for 2 months of a year, I feel like it'd be fun to try and live there for like half a year. And what they offer for me is an experience with a different culture, and I want to experience so many different cultures because I've experienced Canadian culture and English culture and Spanish culture, but there's so many others, so I want to be able to experience every one of them.
Cool. All right. So your Antarctica one isn't really going to help me with my answer, but that is interesting though. Thanks for sharing. And it's funny to hear the roosters in the background. I got 3 roosters here myself, and they're my own children and nephews that are all around me. But yeah, thank you. All right, one more person. How about Addison? I saw you had a little rooster behind you that was peeking up before.
Southern Illinois.
Okay, why?
I went down there for vacation last year, and it was really good. We went to Garden of the Gods, and I like hiking, so there's a lot of rocky areas where you can hike and stuff.
So would you like to live there for a home? Okay, cool. All right, so I'm going to go back to my notes here. And the reason I bring this up, guys, hey, don't do that right now because I'm trying to talk. The reason I bring that up is because it feeds into our conversation about 3 types of density you should understand when thinking about population. So density is how much of something is within a given area. So like if you wanted to look at the population density of your home right now, Let's say your home is 1,000 square feet and you have 6 people who live in your home. So your population density would be 6 per 1,000 square feet. In a city like Woodstock, people are fairly spread out, right? People are fairly spread out. Yeah, you got some people that live around the town, but you got people that are spread out around the city. Whereas in Chicago, like I mentioned before, Chicago has a substantial amount of people packed into a smaller area. So because of that, Chicago's density would be a lot higher. You have a lot more people in Chicago packed into a smaller area than you would in Woodstock. Okay? So let me explain these densities. Arithmetic density is population density. It's just the total amount of people divided by the total land area. So that's like the Chicago Woodstock example I just brought up. You know, every country, every city has a type of density. This is my youngest son here. He is a monster. Okay, hey, why don't you go play right now, okay? Physiological density is the amount of people who live on what's known as arable land. Does anybody know what arable land is? Anybody want to take a guess? Arable land?
Someplace that has a lot of trees.
Plants.
Someplace to what?
Has a lot of trees or plants, environment.
Oh, okay. You're
Flat area where you can plant.
you're close enough. Arable land is land that you can farm on.
Okay, that's what I thought.
So close enough. So like an example of arable land would be the fertile soil around Woodstock. You know, we plant a lot of corn and soybeans. The opposite of that, you know, the antonym would be like the Sahara Desert. You know, very difficult to plant crops in a desert, dry, arid-like atmosphere. Okay. Agricultural density is how many farmers there are to arable land. So the reason geographers look at these three is because they look at population density, arithmetic, and figure out, all right, if you have a lot of people living in a small area, that could cause some problems. Look at COVID-19. Where, if you think of COVID-19 in the United States, what areas of the United States are getting hardest hit by COVID-19? Name them out.
Cities.
Name some areas of the United States where that's getting hit hard by COVID-19.
A lot of like the big cities where people are really close together.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yes. So that's where arithmetic density comes into play. If you're an epidemiologist, somebody who studies infectious diseases, and you're trying to figure out, all right, where's the next big outbreak going to be? You're going to put your money, you're going to bet on a big city because that's where, okay, if the virus spreads mouth to mouth, people in close contact, well, where are people in close contact with one another? Big cities, places people want to live. So density plays a big role just in the study of diseases. With densities related to arable land, it shows, okay, so if we have a lot of people living on this small parcel of land that can be farmed, how many times can we farm that land before we just use it up, before it becomes dry and desert-like? We have to make sure we rotate fields and we use our land properly to support our population. So make sure you know those three types of densities. Remember, arithmetic, people, total land area. Physiological, people living on farmable land. Remember, arable land is farmable land. And agricultural is farmers living on arable land. So this shows the population density of Illinois. So just by looking at this map, guys, where would you say the population densities of Illinois are highest? Around what region?
Chicago.
Yeah, Chicago area. Yeah, anywhere else? What do you think the other red areas are? Let's say this one down here, over here, up here.
University.
Maybe around like Springfield or somewhere.
Okay, Springfield. Any other ideas?
Colleges, maybe universities.
Colleges and universities, that would be right here. This would be Eastern Illinois. Does anybody know what this is right here? What major town? That's a. Go ahead.
No, I don't know.
Okay, This is right near St. Louis. So this is like East St. Louis. So that's why you have some high population density here. Here's
That is
Rockford.
what I was thinking.
Yeah. Okay. There's the Quad Cities. Here's Springfield. I think Springfield's right here. I'm pretty sure. So the point I'm trying to make with these guys is people tend to concentrate around big cities. That's where the densities are highest. Here's the population densities in the United States. So this helps you kind of get an idea of where people like to live and where people don't like to live. So the darker the red, more people live in that spot. The lighter the color or white, less people live in that spot. So right off the bat, in looking at this map of the U.S., and some of this might be common sense, like you guys might have, I would have known this already. But looking at this map, where would you say people don't want to live?
Arizona.
Arizona, okay.
A lot of it's like the Rocky Mountains.
Okay, Rocky Mountains, like the Rocky Mountain regions out here around Colorado.
Mhm.
Okay. Where else? What's up here? What are name some states right up in this region?
North
Montana.
Dakota.
Yeah, the Dakotas and Montana. Very good. Why do people not want to live there? Why would people want to live in I mean, they have a population, but let's face it, that population isn't nearly as large and the density isn't nearly as high as, say, the population of California or big states on the East Coast.
Mount St. Helens.
Oh, like a volcano, like environmental catastrophes?
Yeah.
Okay, possibly. I think environment has something to do with it. I don't know if it's so much because of possibly volcanic activity, but environment definitely has something to do with it.
It gets really cold up there in the winter.
Yeah, very good. People and not only does it get very cold, but if you look at where our population is trending, our population is getting older. We have more and more people who are concentrated in those upper age brackets. Those people don't like to live in cold climates. They like to live in warm climates, which is the reason why if you look at like the South, Texas, the Sun Belt, some of those are becoming more highly dense. California, the East Coast. Any reasons why people would want to live in those areas besides climate?
Hollywood.
Okay, yeah, like the amenities, the lure of a big city. All right, what else? If you guys were job searching, what areas of the country do you think you would find the most jobs and the best paying jobs?
Big cities.
Yeah, big cities, very good, which is why if you look at like Chicago, you got Dallas, Houston, you got the big metropolis over here, or they call this like a megalopolis here on the East Coast, like Washington up through Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York, Boston. A lot of people are living more in the South because of the climate and because it's cheaper too. There's decent paying jobs and it's cheaper to live there. The cost of living is lower. Many people live out in California because of good paying jobs. Again, the lure of living in California, the climate, the amenities. So because of that, here's population density of Egypt. The more purple or red, the more people live around. Does anybody want to name this major waterway?
The Nile.
The Nile.
Yeah, the Nile River. The world's second longest river behind the Amazon. So many people, the density is highest along the Nile River because that's where they get water to feed their crops. That's where you're going to find the most fertile land. If you traveled into the interior lands of Egypt, you're not going to find very many people. Look at it. It's pretty much zero. The population density of Egypt in their countryside essentially is zero because it's really dry and it's really hot and it's really arid, meaning dry desert-like conditions. So if you were a government planner and you guys were in charge of figuring out where to put houses and roads in Egypt, where would you guys do it?
Along the Nile River where everybody is.
Yeah, very good. Along the Nile River. This is where density has a role. And so because of that, it reflects choices people make. We just talked about that. It helps you give ideas. All right, so if the density is so much higher in cities, why cities? We talked about the nightlife. Even though it's more expensive to live there, all the amenities that the city has to offer, the good paying jobs, the transportation networks that you don't have out in smaller rural areas of the country. Hospitals and schools are all located around big cities. So that's some of the reasons. But because of that, you have to figure out, you only have so many resources to go around regarding postal service and education and hospitals. And so because of that, if you're putting all of those services in the urban areas, that doesn't leave much for your rural areas. One of the reasons, if you followed COVID-19, I kind of come back to that because it's the recurring current event here. A lot of people in Texas are dying along the Mexico-Texas border, along El Paso and Ciudad Juarez and some of those cities. A lot of people think that so many people are dying there is because there's not very many hospitals there. These are more rural, poverty-stricken neighborhoods. Some density, some high population density, but the services go to the big cities. They stay away from the smaller cities. And so that's possibly a problem if you're stricken with a pandemic or you got to figure out how to support these people. So if you're a business, you'd want to locate in towards Chicago, around the suburbs. So that leaves fewer businesses and fewer jobs for these collar counties like Will and Grundy County, McHenry County, Boone County out here, because a lot of the businesses like to locate where the people are. The fewer the people, the fewer the businesses you're going to find. And so that's some of the choices that these small towns get faced with. How do we bring in those companies that can offer jobs to our citizens? If you live in a suburb around here, you're going to find a lot of pretty good paying jobs. You have a lot of choices of where to eat, what to go do, transportation. That isn't nearly as plentiful outside of the suburbs and the big city. So all this has to do with, guys, is population density. Those services, those amenities are going to go where the density is highest. And so because of that, you have possible environmental effects. There's some good articles there about how as population density has grown in some of the South and Southwest, farmers are competing for water because they're using up the aquifers as more and more people move into the Southwest. So you're welcome to check this article out. It's really good and informative from the Wall Street Journal. South Africa, they're over this now, but about a year and a half ago, they were going through a major water crisis where people were rationing water. People couldn't take showers. They couldn't flush toilets. The drinking water they had was pretty much restricted to like half a bottle a day because of some environmental changes. So you're welcome to check out these two articles if you'd like. And a lot of that, again, has to do with population densities. So, holy cow, it's almost 9 o'clock. Questions I can answer for today before we wrap up. So in conclusion, you should know the role of women, how the role of women affects the demographic transition model, along with changes in technology. And you should know the three types of density: arithmetic, physiological, and agricultural, and how they relate to choices we make and where people live today. Okay? Stop recording this.